structure of my talk today is sort of split into four parts. So first, I'm just gonna give you a short introduction, like what my background is, where I'm coming from, and also then move on with sort of the question, why would we use Python for Excel at all? Or why do I believe that this is actually going to be a topic that will get much more popular over the years to come? I mean, I would already say it has gained quite a bit of popularity. Otherwise, O'Reilly wouldn't have let me publish the book with that title. But I'm pretty sure that we will see a lot more over the coming years. And then, I mean, I'm not going to walk you through my book chapter by chapter. What I'm going to do is sort of giving you a high level overview of, what's hidden behind that topic, Python and Excel. And so the parts 3 and 4 are sort of the bit of the interactive part. I'm going to give you some demos. I'm going to give you a comparison of what the different use cases are of Python and Excel, the different packages, and when would you use which package. And I guess I don't really know if there is a lot of people here who have maybe a web background, because I know, Matt, you're running or you have advertised it in more web-centric meetups too. So even if you do write your web applications in Python, even then people quite often have to deal with Excel, because everybody's favorite button is the download to Excel button in your web application. So we're gonna look into these packages too that support such a functionality.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone, I mean, like literally everyone goes in the street, they know Excel, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, as you mentioned, many of the companies are getting more and more data, especially after the crisis. The database getting populated more and more. And when the Excel sheet get populated more and more. Now the question is, as you mentioned, why is getting popular? How those data on Excel gonna go to the gonna be parsed, and this is things that's why getting popular.
Yeah. So I'm just going to kick this off with the introduction about myself a little bit and what my company does. So one of the things we do, or I in specifically, is I am the creator of the Python package Excel Wings. We are going to look at this basically in the last part of this presentation. So I'm actually not going to tell too much about it on this page right now. Only maybe one thing at the bottom. So there is an open source version. It started open source. I maintained it for more than 6 years open source. And then I wanted to spend a little bit more time on it. So that's why I added the Pro package to get a little bit of a better compensation model and being able to spend more time on the open source version. Today, I'm not going to touch the Pro version. So we're going to stay entirely in the open source world. Then the other tool that my company maintains is called Excel Trail. And Excel Trail is basically GitHub for Excel files. So a lot of developers who are, well, I mean, from what we've seen, the story is often that a professional developer gets sort of forced to maintain an Excel spreadsheet. And then the first thing they miss is having proper version control. So they start using GitHub, which is fine, but it doesn't really give them the ability to look into the Excel files. It doesn't give them the ability to different Excel files. And so Excel Trail basically treats an Excel file like a text file, and you can look into it. And as you can see here on the screenshot, you can compare the different contents, like the formulas in a spreadsheet, or also the VBA code or Power Query code, etc. And finally, as Matt said, I've literally just basically last month pushed out or published my book about Python for Excel. It's got 4 parts. I do sort of, I wanted to write a book for people who are familiar with Excel. Let's call them advanced users. Often people who may currently use maybe VBA for automating stuff. And I wanted to give them sort of a you know, a guide, a practical guide to guide them away from VBA to a modern language that they can use everywhere. They can use it on a, you know, in a data science context on a server. They can run a Jupyter notebook. They can write a web server with it. They cannot just use it to automate Excel. And that, in my eyes, is sort of the main driver why Python is such a good companion to do that. So in the book, I give an introduction to Python. I give an introduction to pandas. Sort of how would you do things that you currently do in a spreadsheet? How would you do them in pandas? And then the part 3 and 4 are sort of you know, going to be similar to what I'm going to show you today, sort of high level. The two different ways of dealing with Excel and Python. So the first one is without using the Excel application. So literally just by using Python and dealing directly with the Excel files. And then the last one is about really automating the Excel application as such, which has its pros and cons, definitely depending on your use case. Below the link, so there's a couple of more information if that's a book you want to look into. I've also got a video that shows a little bit of the overview, more, you know, going through chapter by chapter of what you can expect. So before we get into the demos and look at a bit of code, I would like to answer the question, why am I pushing for Python and Excel? And so one of the reasons is that, as you know, everybody's, you know, at least all the business facing people are using Excel in one way or another. And often this is basically the way they use it. So they write really, really complex formulas. And this one here is actually not, I didn't really make that up. It's taken from the COVID-19 essential supplies forecasting tool, which is sort of the official tool that the WHO released last year for, you know, the different countries to calculate their need on the supplies, like, you know, safety goggles and gloves and whatnot. And so that's just literally a formula taken out of that spreadsheet. And so it sort of really shows very well, you know, one of the issues that Excel has, which is it really is extremely difficult to understand what's going on. It's difficult to like professionally write automated tests for it. And it's difficult to find errors because that formula, on top of being so complex, is hidden behind a value. So it's like, it's you know, it's out of sight. So that sort of really makes Excel often a difficult choice as soon as you go beyond a very, very basic spreadsheet application. And so it kind of causes the topic to, you know, hit the headlines quite often. And so on the top right is one which is from, well, half a year ago, when Microsoft Excel apparently was involved in the test results, in managing the test results in the UK. And, you know, people didn't used the old format and didn't really understand that after like 56,000 rows that the results were just cut off. So that's like, you know, one way. Just know the tools you're using, and Excel is good for such surprises. And then on the left, you can see like the London Whale, which is a bit further back, I believe from 2012 actually. But it was a very, very big case, just because JP Morgan lost about 6 billion. And that was then partly, or in the paper that they wrote to investigate this case, they were partly blaming it on Excel, and specifically they were mentioning like a you know, a copy paste error. They had a couple of Excel spreadsheets together, and then the other error they had was like a logical error. I believe they divided in a place where they would have had to multiply. So it's very, very difficult once you have the formulas in there. It's really difficult to you know, get a handle on what's going on in a spreadsheet. So that's kind of like why probably people are looking for better ways to get access to Microsoft Excel by not just writing the formulas, given the current the current means or VBA like in the old days, but looking a bit beyond. And sort of quite easy to understand is that the means of today's data scientists is probably gonna be Python.
On YouTube and see if fan.
Yeah.
Let's search for the kinetic sculpture rate. See if you can watch some of it, because it was pretty funny. Oh, you've got something now? No, don't watch the whole thing. It's not worth it.
I want to watch the whole thing.
All right. So I think we had some background noise. No worries. So the slide here shows basically the growth of the Stack Overflow questions on Python, and as you can see, like starting around 2013, it's sort of literally exploded. And needless to say that so many more people getting into Python, they naturally want to use it on what they do on a daily basis, which for many people is still dealing with Python. So that's kind of why Python and not maybe another language. And then finally, sort of, where are we in terms of official support for Excel and Python? And there is this Excel feedback forum, which is on user voice currently. And this is by far the most upvoted feature request they have on there. And so the question was added in 2015, and there wasn't really much going on. They have, done a few questionnaires, but literally like a week after we published the book, they posted an update on March 11th, as you can see, and it sounds promising. So like they are still looking into it, and they are probably looking into it more intensely than at any point in time before that. So I'm almost like sure that we will hear about this again from the side of Microsoft over the next 2 to 3 years. And so that's pretty exciting if they will actually natively take care of that. Okay, and so that will guide us through basically the two areas, or the two sections here in my presentation, which is involving showing you the different use cases of Python for Excel and what you can do and how they differ. And so there's two different types of packages, and the first one in the upper half is about reading and writing files. So as you can see, you just have Python, and then you have one of the packages, and then you deal with Excel file directly. And very often, people love using pandas to do that, just because they use pandas for everything else. Pandas is the go-to analytics library in Python. And pandas under the hood uses one of these packages below here. So like Open PyXL, XLS Writer, XLSX Writer, PyXLSB for XLSB files, or XLRD and XLWT for the old school XLS files. And in the second, in the part after that, in the other section, then we're going to look at Excel Wings, which, unlike these packages here, controls or remote controls the Excel application, and then through Excel manipulates an Excel file. And so while the first part works everywhere where Python works, including Linux and your web server, which is built in Linux, the second one, the automation here with Excel Wings, only works where you have Excel installed. So that is Mac OS and Windows. And so just like high level, the different use cases are, the upper part, as I initially said, would be most likely if you write a web application, you would write code which allows you to click the export to Excel button, and then that would just create the Excel file, and then the user can download it from the web page. And so that's usually where you would use OpenPyXL or XLSX Writer. And then the other way around is also very popular. So especially if you are a startup and you need to create a web interface and you have hundreds of inputs that users need to provide, some sort of configuration. That's where I see this often used, that they provide you a way to upload an Excel spreadsheet, and then you would just read out on your backend. On the server side, you would read out the values provided and then maybe store them in a database or whatever you need to do with it. And it's just very often that building a user interface that allows people to work as efficiently as they are used to from Excel is sort of pretty hard and pretty a pretty big effort, and hence pretty much costs quite a lot. So as a startup, you may just hold back with investing there and go with Excel as your user front end for the time being. And then the lower part, automating Excel, is more about using Excel as a user interface, automating Excel to really use all of its functionality. But we will see that in just a second. So let's get started with the first interactive section here. So let's first have a look into the reading and writing packages. And so,
sorry, Felix, I'm interrupting. I'm going to leave.
Sure.
But I think you're good now. I mean, just
Sure.
if you, one thing is that if someone else just joining, just admit them. But it's so far, I really love your conversation. It's amazing. Even for me as a developers, it was amazing. And one thing is that I'm going to upload this video tomorrow, and anyone going to watch this back, feel free to go back to platform and watch it again. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to follow up next week. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. Bye, Matt. Thanks.
Bye.
All right. So reading and writing Excel files. First of all, as I was mentioning before, a lot of people live in the pandas world, and a lot of people, I've even seen a few clients, they managed to migrate away from Excel to exclusively using Python and Jupyter notebooks and pandas, and that sort of really replaces Excel for them. But the companies that can or achieve doing that are sort of the minority, because you need to have a certain technical level. Yeah, you need to probably be small enough so that you can enforce usage of these tools. And if you're in a slightly bigger company, it's probably the data scientists and the technical people, they could be using this. But then if you need to send a report to your management, it's often back to Excel. So it's really great to know how they interact with each other. One thing you obviously gain by moving away from Excel is you can basically work with data sets, as big as you want. So usually if you deal with pandas, then they just have to fit within the available memory in your workstation or your server where you are doing your work. And it's also much easier to understand what's going on. So you have, as we will see in a moment, you will have your code in front of you, and then you have maybe an output, and you have the data maybe in a CSV file. So it's not all mixed together and the values kind of, hiding away the formulas. And you also don't need to copy a formula hundreds of times and then running the risk that maybe when you change it, you forget to change it in one way, which can cause the whole model to behave in a weird way. And so finally, as I said, pandas wraps the reader and writer libraries, and how this works is now the topic of my first demo. So let me switch to the Jupyter Notebook here. So I have no idea about the the existing knowledge here of all you who are on the call. So I'm going to assume that everybody sort of has heard about Python and has heard about Jupyter Notebooks and sort of maybe also a little bit of pandas. If not, then you can see things in action. You can also ask questions, obviously, and then I can go a bit deeper. Other than that, as I said before, the Jupyter Notebook here is often used as a kind of a replacement for Excel. So I have picked one case study from my book that we can have a look into. And we start by just importing the pandas library, as I mentioned, sort of the spreadsheet in Python. And in the easiest possible way that you can use pandas in connection with an Excel file is just to say, okay, pandas use the read Excel function, provided the name or the path to the file. And let me just show you how this looks like. So we do have here a directory of a lot of sales data. So we have let me actually choose this. We have the XLSX files here for like new contracts of some sort of a company that actually doesn't matter. And then we have another subfolder here, which has the old format of the XLS files. And so in pandas, you can just do read Excel. And once you execute this little code cell here, you can see that it absolutely does look like a spreadsheet. And this allows you to quickly load data from Excel into pandas and have it formatted as a pandas data frame, which again, you can sort of look at it as an Excel table. Obviously, if the Excel spreadsheet is a bit formatted in a different way, if you need to read in a specific sheet, there are options that you can specify to have pandas do exactly this. But other than that, this is ideally as simple as it can get. And as I said, it uses the OpenPyXL library under the hood for reading in XLSX files. Now, one thing you can do with pandas is, or always a good idea, like when you load data, is actually to run the info method here. And that will show you the different types of these objects. And as you can see, like the transaction date is in a date time format, and the amount is in a float, and all the rest is in object. And the object for the time being is what pandas shows you when it uses a string in those fields. And so without even having to do something, pandas did recognize the data type properly from those different columns, because the Excel file usually has this information, formatted, and so pandas is able to do its interpretation here. So that's can be very, very easy or very, very nice, so that you don't really have to care about the data objects.
Can I ask a quick question, Felix?
Sure.
Do you know if pandas is able to read Excel tables? I know it reads the worksheet, but can it read an actual Excel table?
That is a good question. I am pretty sure that actually the OpenPyXL, the underlying library, can read out the specific table. I would say that pandas doesn't have an interface currently built in for you to specify the table name. I believe the means that pandas gives you is sort of, you can say, okay, let's start in row 10 and column 8, or let's just take columns, A to Z. So you can restrict the based on the cell address, but I believe you cannot currently from pandas directly read out the Excel tables.
And I assume the same applies to named ranges too?
Yeah, I would say so. But this is definitely, these are things that you will be able to do by using OpenPyXL directly and not by going through pandas.
I see.
So it's definitely possible.
OpenPyXL, it reads the data as what? As a regular Python array or list or whatever we're calling this? Or does it use NumPy, or what does it actually do?
No, it gives you back a standard Python object. So whether when that is a single cell, it actually does force you to, it's a bit low level, so it actually forces you to like most of the time like loop through single cells, or I believe, I mean, some of them do allow you to do row operations, in which case it will return like a list of those cell values. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No worries. Then also like describe is always a good idea to run on a data frame. In this case now, it isn't too exciting just because we only have one numeric column, and also because the numeric numbers in there aren't so excited because they're just a bunch of different prices. But if you have, let's say, I don't know, like some observations about some trials, then that can give you sort of an interesting quick overview of how the data is actually distributed. And then, so what I'm gonna do in that case study in the book is basically that we would like to aggregate all these spreadsheets, because I've seen a lot of people, they get a lot of spreadsheets, and in the end, what they need to do is they need to aggregate the data and build some aggregated report out of that. And yeah, probably, I mean, you could, I don't know, like a basic spreadsheet user would probably open all those spreadsheets, then maybe copy one into another, or I don't know, write a VBA routine that does that. But in Python, you do get some tools that just make things so simple that, you know, I can highly recommend using some of these tools. So what I'm doing in this cell here is basically I'm going through that sales data folder, and I just, you know, tell it to go through every file that matches this expression here. So it has an XLS or an XLSX ending, and it does so recursively. So like no matter how many subfolders you have, I will loop through all those files in all those subfolders, which already, you know, is a very advanced use case in some other areas. If you wanted to use, for example, Power Query or VBA, you're gonna jump through hoops there. So just to you know, achieve some of these basic things. And then again, I'm just gonna use readXL, and then I'm gonna paste them all together into a list, put all these data frames into a list. And that really just takes a moment. And then I have read in all these 24 different Excel files, and they are now in that list, which I called parts. So this is a list of data frames. Now, what I'm doing now is I'm concatenating those parts into a single data frame, which means that all of the data from these 12 different Excel files now lives in a single, well, data frame or virtual spreadsheet if you want so. And so we can quickly look at those. I'm also sorting the values by the transaction date. And as you can see now, what happened is sort of the magic that Pandas has. So if you would open those spreadsheets, you would notice that the XLS, the XLS variant of the files, they are missing the status column here. And so that's why you don't even have to do anything. You just can concatenate it, and Pandas will still concatenate it based on the column header. And so that's extremely powerful, and it's sort of extremely difficult to do in Excel, and sort of really a source for a lot of errors that happen, because, you know, if you don't really watch closely, you may just copy paste things underneath each other, and then maybe you just misalign a column, and that's where like easily you can start getting into troubles, because maybe, you know, that is at the end of your spreadsheet and you hardly scroll back down there. So that's like how oftentimes errors are sort of sneaking in a spreadsheet world. And so Pandas sort of does quite a few things that make it easy to get around of these typical errors that can happen in a spreadsheet. And so as you can see here, we do have now the dates going starting at the 1st of January and then all the way down to the 31st of December. And well, you know, from from looking at it, things look okay. As I said before, it did align the columns correctly. And so at this point, it's also always good to have another look at the info method. And you can also see that here. So we have about 16,000 data rows on the transaction date and all the other ones, but not here on the status column. So the status column has about like half of it, which is only those sheets from one of the subfolders, the XLSX file type. So that is like how you can get an easy overview of your data and sort of verify if things look the way that they should look. Then often sort of what in Excel is your best friend to aggregate and analyze data is a pivot table. Most of the users, you know, are sort of, it's an advanced topic, let's call it this way. A lot of users don't really know how to use the pivot table in Excel. But there is really the same concept here in Pandas. So it's also called pivot table. It just requires the source data, and then you need to specify what goes where, you know, what goes into the index, what goes into the columns, and then what are you doing with the values in between. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to say I want to have the dates here. I want to split it up by the different shops here. And then I want to sum up the values per date. And this is obviously, this is still a bit hard to understand and hard to read because it's every single day of the year. So what we are going to do as a next step here in this little case study is to aggregate those numbers on a monthly basis. And so this is another area where I believe that Excel is sort of a bit struggling, like working in general with, you know, date time-based data is really hard in Excel. So in Pandas, you can just say, you know, resample here on an end of month basis. So M stands for end of month, and you have other possibilities. You can do business end of month, or, you know, calendar end of month, and so on, weekly, and so on. So we just want to resample this table and aggregate it by summing it up to those end of month data. And then once we do that, we have a nice table which for each month gives you the total sum of sales split up by every location. And so it basically, if you just look at it in a condensed version, it's about really roughly 10 lines of code you need to do all that, what we've just done, like aggregating a whole directory of files into a condensed table of knowledge here. And so data tables are fine, but usually what everybody is more interested in is looking into visualization. And the way that Pandas or let's say the data science part of Python handles this is by using one of the plotting libraries. Pandas does use matplotlib under the hood, but for like these notebooks, I much prefer Plotly. So you can set the backend here by just one line, and then when you actually execute this plot command here, then you get this nice sort of interactive plot and chart. And you can, for example, if you say, okay, I'm just going to be, you know, interested in July, you can easily zoom into that region. And if you would love to just ignore some data points, then you can also deselect them here, depending on like the style of the chart that may make more sense or not. So that's why I sort of prefer that the Plotly library here for visualization, because it's really interactive. You can zoom in, you can unselect stuff here without having to program anything. So that's purely from the chart control. And so that is sort of where that little, you know, demo ends in terms of interactive Jupyter Notebook use, or let's say as a in sort of the alternative of using a spreadsheet. And I would love to now share this, this output or this summary table with my manager, who may be extremely far away from Jupyter Notebooks and Python, and they just want to look at the data. And so here again, Pandas does offer you the 2XL method. And like before, when reading an Excel file, it couldn't be any simpler than that. You have your data frame, you give it a name, and that's about it. So you can go here and find that. Let me see where that is. Sales report Pandas. Yes, so that's that one. You can open that spreadsheet and you can see that it's a bit basic in the sense that you would have to unhide those, or you have to adjust the column width just to make sure that everything is visible. And also, I mean, things are not like properly very, very nicely formatted, but again, it's like 10 lines of code that we used to like aggregate all these different files into that Excel report. So for that much effort, that's a pretty good outcome. And that's kind of the round trip of using the reader and writer libraries in Python through the higher level interface of Pandas. And the main reason why this is so nice to use them through Pandas is that no matter whether you are dealing with XLS or XLSX files, or also now reading XLSB files, the binary format, that is all supported in Pandas, and you can use the very same code. So it's really just readXL and 2XL, and you will get the result, and you don't have to learn the specifics of each different package. And at this point, let me go back to my presentation here. So I'd still like to mention, how the lower level packages that Pandas uses under the hood, how they work. And so this is a table here that you will also find in the book. And it basically gives you the key to when to use which package, because I find this quite confusing for somebody who is new to the topic, that they sort of have to find out first which of those many packages will do the job that they are trying to solve. And so, if you want to read an XLSX file, you're going to use OpenPyXL. If you are going to write an XLSX file, you can actually choose between two alternative packages. XLSX writer tends to be a bit faster, but if you are just writing a small amount, then that doesn't really matter. So I would invite you to have a look at both and then draw your own conclusions. With OpenPyXL, you can also edit files, but what happens in reality is that it reads the Excel file with all it knows and understands, and then it builds the new file from scratch with all that content it understands and the potential changes you make to that content. So it isn't able to like properly edit your workbook. And what that means is that occasionally, depending on what you have in your spreadsheet, if you just have a bunch of data, then usually that is no issue at all. But if you have specifically formatted charts and more complex or more advanced stuff, then you can actually lose some of the formatting, or maybe it assigns a different name. So there you will need to be careful in finding out whether or not the editing experience will actually tick the box for you. And so instead of going into all these packages and showing you like the nitty-gritty details, I have pasted the link here, which points to a script. And that script basically is pretty much the same, is doing very much the same as what we have just done, going through that directory of sales data and aggregating the data. But then it uses OpenPyXL directly to write the report. And so I can actually I can actually run this here while I explain this. And so what this does, or what the advantage you get on top of using pandas to write an Excel file, is it allows you to include, formatting, like conditional formatting. It allows you to include charts, etc. So if we go here, and I believe that should be the, sales report, OpenPy, oops, not that one, that one. Then you see now that I was able to applied conditional format here. So it's read if the sales number is below 20K here. And you've got a chart below here, which obviously makes it a lot easier for a manager to get a quick overview of how well the different stores are operating over time. So that is sort of when I would advise you to have a look at the underlying packages. Obviously, if you do not intend to use pandas, then it's always good to use the reader and writer libraries directly, because you sort of get rid of the NumPy and pandas dependency if you don't need it anyways. Cool. So that is pretty much what I wanted to show you on.
Felix, may I ask you a question?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. If you convert it into, for example, the Excel spreadsheet format that you just showed, and you send it off to your manager, what is the manager getting exactly? Are they just getting the endpoint numbers? In other words, they're not getting any of the backup data numbers?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So they will get exactly those numbers that you will write to Excel. So if we just quickly return to this line of code here, so they will get, in that sense, they will just get the summary data. So they will get exactly this table. And if you open that again, sales report pandas, then that should be exactly equivalent. So as you can see, that looks good. So I mean, we do have here the 21 from Boston in January. So they will really just get that. So it's really a summary information. If you don't give them more data, then that is all what they get. So it's up to you. Like if you feel, they I don't know, maybe the current month they will need the more granular data, then you can create an Excel file where you dump, let's say, 2 data frames, and so they have more data available. So
Right.
that is obviously then up to you. Yeah.
Can you dump those on different separate sheets within the workbook, or are you limited to just one sheet per workbook?
No, you can absolutely. So what I'm showing you here is really just like the most basic use case of doing this. So you can always write to the different sheets. You can even write 2 data frames to the same sheet. So I can also, like, there's a so there's the repository from the book, where I have all the different notebooks from the different chapters. And so for that use case, like going a little bit more into the details, you should be able to look at chapter, let me just think, I believe it's chapter 5. Let me just, no, it's actually, it's actually, let me just double check, because then you can look at it. So that would be chapter 7 and 8. So you could just have a look at it. So like all of the samples of the book, they are here, and you can see similar examples that I've just done, but using more sophisticated options here are applied, like cutting down the rows or the columns here that you read in, and then for example, this is actually what you were asking. So, well, no, this is actually the read case. So below we would have the writer case. So this is the syntax here that you could use to write different data frames here to different places on your spreadsheet. and to different sheets. So you can see I'm writing them here, 2 on sheet 1, and then 1 on sheet 2. So that is all possible, and obviously then with using the OpenPyXL library or XLSX writer, even more so. Yeah.
That's great. It's a mystery, isn't it? Why people are so much more comfortable with Excel. You know, I think it's something about the visual format of it, you know.
Well, it's just very, very intuitive, right? And I mean, it's like it has pros and cons. So like simple things are easy to follow in how they work, like the calculations. So they can just like follow the formulas and sort of intuitively see what's going on, which is great to understand something and to share, you know, a methodology. But yeah, then like if you start building bigger tools out of it, then that sort of, you know, sometimes backfires, and it's very, very complex. It's very, very
oh yeah, I've built some hellacious Excel workbooks.
well, everybody has, I guess, sometimes in their life almost. So
You know, it was so easy to, you know, interface it to a, you know, a back-end database of some sort, and then create a bat file to update it regularly, and it just worked. And but you're right. I mean, you get over 1 million rows, and it's just, it doesn't work. You know?
yeah, then you get to a hard stop with over 1 million rows, definitely. It also goes like a lot of people are misusing Excel sort of as a database. So it grows really, really big. It's like, you know, 50, 60 megabytes easily. And that just becomes extremely hard to manage and to send around, and like Excel sometimes then messes things up. So yeah, Excel is great, but don't like, you know, push it too hard.
Yeah, no,
That's my take of it.
Yeah, yeah. But no, you're right. Clients always want it in Excel. You know, you explain the whole process of the data, the import, the export, all the ETL, et cetera. They're like, that's great. But can you give it to me in Excel workbook?
Yeah, exactly. Or like, okay, this new web application is awesome, but can you add the export download to Excel button, right? Exactly. So yeah, that is how it goes.
So it's awesome to hear that Excel might be reading in Python as a scripting tool. I mean, that blows my mind. That's amazing. That would be amazing.
Oh, it would, absolutely. So I mean, they've done a good job in adding features most recently, you know, for example, the dynamic arrays, or they introduced the XLOOKUP formula. So they've done some things that a lot of people sort of complained about for a long time, or, you know, were just like very, very annoying to use for the longest time. And it looks like they started listening a lot more to user feedback, and so they definitely are looking into Python for Excel, and I believe that would probably, you know, save Excel's spot for the next 20 to 30 years again.
Yeah, and they took access out of the lineup basically, and you know, incorporated the old access stuff into the new Excel, you know, in terms of relational databases and tables of that nature. And that was a big step, because it was like either Excel or, wow, go to the opposite extreme, access, you know, and in terms of intuitiveness. And yeah, they're moving along. But anyway, thank you. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. So I see that, I mean, we're already like almost like a 50 minutes, so it's much longer than I've planned to do this, but this is the last part I want to show. So that was the reader and writer part through pandas, or then directly through the underlying packages. And so as the last step here, I really wanted to show you what my library XLWings is able to do. So for once, you can actually use it as an interactive sort of data viewer or scratchpad for your data when you are working with the Jupyter Notebook. So let's actually, before we jump to the next point, let's actually have a quick look at how this works. So let me just continue here on the notebook. And I mean, we've done some analysis now, some mini analysis on those sales data, and we're aggregating them. And so, yeah, sometimes it's just easier for me to look at the data in Excel. And so the Excel Wings library, as I said, initially has the ability, let me just scroll back here, has the ability to interact with a running instance of Excel. So obviously, this now requires you to be on either Mac OS, like I am currently, or Windows to be able to interact with Excel. And so if you have a lot of data, sometimes it's just easier to look at it in Excel and maybe, I don't know, filter or do a quick chart. That's sometimes people prefer that. And the view function here does exactly that. For, I don't know if anybody of you has ever worked with R and R Studio. So there you can just say view your data, and it'll open up in a integrated sort of spreadsheet-like view. And so that's sort of mimicking that. And the other way around is also like, it's also possible. So like you get a spreadsheet from somebody and you just quickly want to run it in or get it into your Jupyter notebook here. So you just click into that table and then call the load function from Excel, and it's back here formatted as a pandas data frame. And so it just takes the whole table, the current region here. But if you wanted to, let's say, just cut it down to like this area here, then do this, and accordingly it will transfer over just that selected area. So that's just sort of very high level functions that are purely meant to be used in such an interactive environment when you are doing some research in a Jupyter notebook and somebody gives you an Excel file, or you just have an Excel, a data table that you wanted to look into a bit more granularly in Excel, then that is an easy way to do it. Because as you saw, Pandas often just shows you the head and the tail of a data set, and then basically you can't really scroll through it, even though that's sometimes useful. So that's sort of what Excel Wings allows you to do. And then what it also allows you to do is to properly edit Excel files. So let me close that. And what I mean by that is it's sort of, and that is the second point here. It allows you to use it for reporting by literally filling in existing Excel workbooks as your template. So this is also a case from the book. So you can have your template here where you format things in the color and the font and whatnot that you need. And then you just take Excel Wings, and if I find my workbook, my Jupyter notebook again, you can write data to it. So if you have ever worked with VBA before, then the Excel Wings syntax is really, really simple and very, very familiar. So you can have a workbook here, and then you get access to its sheet. So you have the sheet object, and now you can just access the little cells, whether you want to do that by numeric index, or here, as I do it, by using the A1 cell address notation. So if I wanted to put in my summary table here into Excel, then all I need to do is I need to assign it to the value property here of the top left cell in the book. And so as you can see, it pastes it in, it uses the pre-formatted template. Accordingly, it has the chart set up. You can also run things like autofit the columns. That is some of the functionality which is hard to do when you use a reader and writer libraries. And then here, just make sure that the source data is properly adjusted. And then again, you can save the book, and you will have this as a separate Excel workbook available without changing your original template. So that is one of the most popular use cases of Excel Wings. That's not like originally why I created it. I created it because I wanted to have Excel as an interactive user interface. And so, but then I've seen a lot of people using it for that template mechanism, just because this allows them to, keep the Excel file consistent 100%. It's literally just pasting values as if you would do that by hand. And so that is quite a nice thing to do, because it saves you a lot of code from writing a lot of code by having to do the formatting sort of manually in Python. Then the second to last use case here that I wanted to show you is rapid prototyping. So using Excel really just as a front end. And I see a lot of people use this because the alternative, I believe, is creating a simple web application. But a lot of data scientists, they do not have the skills, they don't really do a lot of HTML or JavaScript or CSS, so they don't really feel comfortable, or they are not quick at doing such a user interface in web technology. So they prefer getting a spreadsheet and then doing their Python code in the back, which is more of where they are at home. And so I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of the application that I'm building in the book. But then I'm going, rather than going through the details of how it works, which by the way is also available on the book's repository on GitHub, but rather than going into the details here, I'll then just switch over to Windows and quickly show you how you can create such a project and how you can also do user-defined function. And then I'll wrap this meetup up. So, sorry. So this is a business application I've done, and I wanted to use it as a demonstration of how to use, the most prominent features, like downloading data from the internet and storing it in a database, and then displaying the analytics in the Excel spreadsheet. So the way it works is you give it an Excel, you give it a Python package, and you tell it to get that Python package from the package repository from Python, get the release data. And so what happened now is it called Python through Excel Wings, and it was downloading the data and pushing it into the database. And so I can do that for a lot more packages. And so once they are, in the database, you can just select here the package name, and then call another Python function in the back, which is aggregating the data much in the way that we have just previously done it in the Jupyter Notebooks. It uses pandas that aggregates all the data, and then you can see how many releases the Excel Wings package has had over the past couple of years. And it's just a sample of a typical business application of how you can use Excel as a pure interface. And so, one of the things that is worth mentioning here is that, well, first of all, that here is a pandas chart. So that's basically a picture. Sometimes that's convenient if you have, if you have a complex chart in Python and want to send it over to Excel, then there's easy ways to do that. But you could also replace that with a native Excel chart. So that's sort of up to you. And then the other thing is that the whole Excel file does not have a single formula. So all of these values here are really just that. They are values, and they are just sent over from Python via Excel Wings, and that makes them really easy to debug and develop, because you don't have any logic in your spreadsheet. And so, as I said, to wrap this up, I just wanted to show you finally the only functionality which is only available on Windows, which is why I am now switching over to Windows. So
can I ask something really quickly before you move to the next one?
Sure.
So the previous one that you just demonstrated and then you went through. So I assume that's VBA code in the Excel spreadsheet that runs the Python in the background, or what was happening in there?
Yes, absolutely. So when we
And
go into
how
the...
do you set that up? I mean,
yeah, so I'm actually going to show a little bit of that just right now, but if you go into the books module here, then you can see that there's a couple of different VBA functions, and they use the run Python function, which is provided by the XLWings, either the XLWings add-in or by the XLWings VBA module. So you always have two different possibilities. You don't necessarily need to install the add-in, which makes the deployment a lot easier. And then you basically just call Python code. So you just import the module that is doing, the magic, and call the function from such a module. And then that is basically how the connection between Python and Excel works. But let me do the quick start demo, which sort of probably also answers a bit these questions in a bit more stripped down version of a tool. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. So, because I just wanted to sort of start at the high level and show you what eventually you may be able to build with it. So usually, like when XLWings is a Python package, so you just do pip install XLWings, or it's also part of Anaconda. You can also do conda install XLWings, but if you do have Anaconda, then it's already pre-installed there. So, and to manipulate Excel, like we have just done before in the Jupyter Notebook, you don't need anything else. But to use XLWings or Python from Excel, the way that I have just shown you, you will need to either install the XLWings add-in, or as I just mentioned, have the XLWings VBA module installed. And so the easiest way usually to get things running is by running the XLWings quick start command, and that will really just make it easier for you to get started. So what it does is it creates a folder here, and that folder has an Excel file, which is already sort of prepared. And then you have the Python code here, which is really just two little, not this one, bear with me, it's gonna open it. Yeah, this one. So you really just have two little functions here. So that one, the main function here, you could invoke here by going to the XLWings add-in and say run main. And then that is basically calling that function. And so accordingly, when you click it again, then it will change to by XLWings. And then again, you could alternatively build such a VBA function, and it has this VBA function pre-built. So into that template, when you run that quick start command, so you could, for example, just say add a button here and then say sample call, and then when you click that, you will get the same function called from Python. So that is basically one way of using XLWings, and that is the way that the application worked that I just shown before. And this is also the functionality that works across platforms. So if you build that tool, it will work equally well on Windows as on Mac OS. Now, the last functionality here that I wanted to show you, the user-defined functionality, this one is only available on Windows. And let me actually try to make this a little bigger so you can actually see something. So the way to make that function available in Excel is by giving this the XLWings func decorator. And then you will go into your XLWings add-in and say import functions. And once you have done that, it will then be available as as a function here. So you can say hello Excel wings, and you will get the output of this here. And then you can actually, you know, change things, and you should only be required to recalculate that formula, and you will get the output from the Python side here. So that's like the very basics of how user-defined functions work. And so in the book, then we'll also build a little bit more of an involved function. And I thought, like, to wrap this whole demo up, I might just show you this. It's you don't necessarily need to look at the code, but you can. I mean, if you want to, then probably it's easier for you to go to the books repository and look at it online. But what it can do is basically you can build sophisticated functions. So in my example, I am actually querying the Google Trends API. And so this will work like this. So get interest over time. I will give it some IDs here from Google Trends, and then like a start and an end date. And then it goes to now to Google Trends and downloads the data directly into my Excel. And as you can see, I've picked these identifiers are for some programming languages. So you can actually see here the interest over time. So this is the data that you could download from Google Trends as a CSV file. But, you know, going to Google Trends, typing in the keywords that you want to have the data for, clicking on the CSV file, finding the downloaded file, and copy pasting the data into Excel is just so cumbersome that using Python, like for, you know, like for almost any functionality, you will find a package that does the things for you. And so not having to do this copy paste functionality just probably gets rid of, I don't know, like 50% of all errors that happen in Excel. So that is definitely why I think Python is just such a good companion for Excel. And so the other part here to demo is actually that you can also write a function here that then produces a plot in Python, a matplotlib plot, so basically a pandas plot, and paste it in here. And so having this, you can actually then go and say, okay, well, let's see how the history changes when I go to 21. And so it goes to Google Trends, fetches the data, pastes it in here, and also the data, also the matplotlib chart here, which is really just a picture, gets automatically updated. So you are able to build quite nice, interfaces, and just take advantage of the whole universe that Python offers you, from the data analytics in pandas to machine learning, if you are into that, to just an easy way to get your data from anywhere you need them to, from any database, from any web page. You can use web scraping, you can use API access. It's just all there. It's just all easy, and you don't have to jump through any hoops to achieve what you wanted to achieve. And then finally, let's say like this tool gets bigger and outgrows your audience, then it is usually easy to transform your existing Python code into a different form. So maybe there is a web developer taking care of building a professional user interface for it. Or maybe it's just good enough to migrate it to a Jupyter notebook if you want, or one of the dashboards that Python also, one of the web-based dashboards that Python also offers. So that's why, like, I believe it's just such a strong companion to Excel, because it leaves all the doors open. And unlike Power Query or VBA, which are only really available in Excel and maybe Power BI mostly, all the doors are open. You can build whatever tool out of it. And yeah, that is why I wrote a book about it. And I hope that one of you or one or the other maybe has a use case of using this combination. And if you have any question, then feel free to send me an email. Well, later on, if you have a question now, obviously, then please go ahead and ask me now.
Felix, I want to say thank you for your book. I have already bought it from Amazon. Awesome. And I hope with help of your book, I will learn Python. Thank you very much.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you.
So do you have like, what is your background? Are you like a proficient Excel user, or were you doing some VBA before, or do you have some other programming background?
Yes, I'm advanced Excel user. I use VBA, I use Power Query, and I started last year. I started to learn Python, but I could not find good sources to connect Python with Excel. And and when scrolling LinkedIn, I found your book. I immediately ordered it in Amazon. And now I'm very happy to get this book and to speak with you. Thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate that feedback. Thank you very much. Yeah, happy to hear more feedback once you get through the book. Great. Does anybody else have any questions right now? All right, thanks for sharing, Deborah. Thanks. I will definitely check out your link, Deborah, on your workshop.
Oh, thank you. I'm from Brazil and a little bit nervous about my English, but some months ago I did a workshop because I'm Paileris, São Paulo, because I'm living in São Paulo. And I worked a lot with Excel, but when I started to learn Python, it's my mind open, and I started to read a lot about pandas. And I did this workshop. It's unfortunately in Portuguese, but I think the coding is good for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I know Spanish, so I probably can understand a bit of what you write. So
it's my task. I put in English also.
Okay. Great. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Definitely gonna look at it.
Oh, thank you. It's if I can help a little bit if pandas with Excel, and I will start to I will buy your book also because I think there are many examples, good examples for me.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, and definitely, if you like the book, obviously also if you don't like it, but especially if you like the book, feel free to do a review on Amazon. That definitely helps a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. And also thanks everybody for attending on a Saturday. So that I guess is also a special day. I don't think I've ever given a meetup on a Saturday, but that's cool. All right. Thanks so much for all your feedback and questions. So if you don't have anything else right now, I would say enjoy your weekend. And as I said, if you have any questions coming up while you read the book or while you try out the samples, then just feel free to shoot me an email. I believe that email should be on my GitHub profile. You will find it on excelwings.org. It shouldn't be so hard to find my email. So definitely you can reach out to me. And other than that, I hope you have a great weekend. And thank you so much for attending.
Thank you. It was well worth a Saturday, an hour. Well worth. And also,
Great to hear.
I just wanted to mention, I took a look at what your, your website, and it's very helpful too. So thank you.
No worries. Glad to hear. All right. Well, that was a very interesting and cool meetup, and nice meeting you all. And then I hope we'll see each other on, on one place or another. And by the way, I also usually share my last slide, which is about, which also includes my LinkedIn. So feel free to also connect on LinkedIn. I do also post regular updates there on LinkedIn about XLWings new releases, maybe blog posts I write or videos I publish. So definitely, if that is a topic that is of interest to you, then yeah, I invite you to connect, and I'll definitely see you there.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend and talk soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.